What's up, MetaNerdz? This video is all about the Jedi Starfighter of the Old Republic. It was manufactured by Republic Fleet Systems, the company that gave us its successor, the Aurek-class, and the large KT-400 military droid carrier. Its cost is quite low, especially considering that the XC-01 was an experimental craft, utilizing a lot of new design elements for its time, yet still being only 145,000 credits, about one-third the cost of the Corellian ships the S-100 Stinger and Chela-class, but also cheaper than the later Incom ships the ARC-170 and the X-Wing. At 13 meters or 43 feet, it was half a Jawa shorter than the X-Wing and about twice the length of the Aurek. Being 11 meters or 36 feet across, it was also half a Jawa thinner than the X-Wing, but only half the wingspan of the enormous ARC-170. And at 2 meters tall, it was just a bit shorter than the Z-95 Headhunter, tied with a Wookiee, and less than half the height of the ARC-170. This small profile was combined with an incredible top atmospheric speed of 1,280 km per hour, or 795 miles per hour, making it remarkably faster than the X-Wing, but it even beats out the TIE Fighter and TIE Interceptor, though its successor the Aurek does top out at 1,400 km per hour. Its hyperdrive rating is a Class 2, slower than most starfighters of the later eras, and something that we also see in the Stinger. So it was small and fast, but to really blow away the competition, it packed a pair of heavy blaster cannons, something you really don't ever see on a starfighter. Even the ARC-170 only had medium laser cannons, so to get heavy cannons on a ship that small is really incredible. Top this off with a relatively powerful deflector shield, and you got yourself an amazing ship at a very low cost. It only required a single pilot to operate it, but a slight problem is that this almost always had to be a Jedi. You see, there's an ancient phrase that may have originated with this very ship, coming from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, which says if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Because this powerful, cheap, and fast starfighter also had one of the worst maneuverability ratings of any starfighter in history. This is where they were able to cut the production cost, but it also earned it a reputation as being an incredibly dangerous ship to pilot, being more likely to crash into your enemy than light them up with your heavy cannons. Jedi Knight Dace Diath's comments on the Star Saber give us great insight on this, quoted as saying, "I can handle the Star Saber, just push back on the stick a little early, and use the Force." He was actually one of its first test pilots, and the one who discovered just how bad its maneuverability was when he crashed into the side of a mountain. He was able to escape the crash, but his optimistic quote only came out of necessity. Luckily for Republic Fleet Systems, the Krath Holy Crusade was being launched in the deep core by Sith-inspired cultists who utilized the dark side of the Force. This meant the Jedi Order had to mobilize with the best equipment available, and since the Jedi Temple world on Ossus was being used as a test site, the ship was green-lighted for combat. Despite its concerns, many Jedi like Dace felt they could just use the Force to overcome its issues, so this experimental craft was used alongside the S-100 Stinger during the length of this conflict. A couple of years into the war against Krath, the Great Sith War broke out, consuming most of the galaxy and pushing the Star Saber into mass production, without Republic Fleet Systems ever fixing these flaws. Instead, they dedicated their engineers to the task of making sure that they could capitalize on the next big Republic contract with a completely new class of fighters. After decades of conflict, the Republic realized that they needed to update their ships, and introduced the Generation Tomorrow Starfighter contest to see which company could create the XC-01 successor. Though the S-250 made it a close decision, the small, incredibly fast, and highly maneuverable Aurek-class starfighter was ultimately selected. This solidified RFS's place as a major supplier to the Republic for the next 4 millennia, until it was nationalized by the Senate during the Clone Wars. Interestingly, the ship that would come to be known as the Jedi Starfighter during the Clone Wars, the Delta 7, also was aided in its maneuverability through the use of the Force by many Jedi in intense dogfights. So that's it for its history, but you definitely want to hear these cool facts and behind the scenes stuff. The ship first appeared in the comic Tales of the Jedi, Dark Lords of the Sith 6, back in 1995. Most of these stats are from the Star Wars role-playing game from 2002, and the Knights of the Old Republic campaign guide. I know this is a bit of MetaNerdz overthinking here, but I wanted to mention that I think the name Star Saber may be a reference to the fact that only Jedi could use it, just like a lightsaber. In an older visual dictionary of the original trilogy that I have, it mentioned that a lightsaber would kind of oscillate, moving in a way that was much too unwieldy for normal folk, who couldn't call on the power of the Force to assist them in its handling. I always kind of liked this explanation as a way of addressing why everybody didn't just fight with at least a lightsaber sidearm, so I thought the fact that the ship is also called a saber, and only controllable by Jedi, was kind of a cool connection. But that's it for the Star Saber XC-01. If you want to connect with us, help support this channel, or get your own copies of the reference materials used to make this video, be sure to check out the links in the description. Special shout out to our supporters over on Patreon, but most important of all, remember, always read the fine print when purchasing experimental fighters, and the Force will be with you, always.